All right. So hello, everybody. Today we'll be talking about best practices in event tracking. What is it? What are kind of best practices around this? Why it matters, and how to approach it both for quick wins and also for long-term success. We'll be keeping this very conversational. With me today is Ahmad, who's squad leader at our integration analytics squad at Adasite. Ahmad brings over 10 years of experience in the space of product analytics. And last year alone, we together implemented over 50 setups in analytics. So very excited to dive into this topic together. And we'll at times also refer the event tracking playbook, which is downloadable, and we'll also share in the description if you want to dive into the topic further. So with that, without further ado, Ahmad, first question for you. What are, for beginners, what is like a simple way to describe what event tracking is and why it matters? Or like, let's start with what it actually is, and then we can dive why it matters.
Yeah. So events are basically specific actions that you can track, which your users take on your product. So they can vary from high impact events, such as when a user conducts a transaction, or if you're an e-commerce website, when a user adds something to their cart, that can be tracked as an event, or they could be steps that a user takes across a user journey. So, for example, if you have an onboarding process where a user wants to create their own account and has to go through a journey with different steps, you can track each of those steps with an event. So, essentially, what event tracking does, it goes one layer deeper than just tracking basic metrics and KPIs, and helps you understand the user behavior on your product. Instead of you guessing how your users are actually using your product, you can identify the actual user behavior through data to see how your product is being used by your users. So yeah, this basically a very quick overview of what event tracking is.
Nice, nice. So, and coming to the why somebody would be caring about it, I guess from the general standpoint, you would be thinking, okay, I do want to have more visibility and on users are engaging and I care about product analytics. And why in this context, like why, how does that relate? Like if you want to have clarity on product analytics and behavioral usage, how does events come into that?
Yeah, so you can use event tracking for various purposes, right? So first would be that if you want to look at the number of transactions that are happening on your platform, you can track those. You can track the number of users who are actually conducting those transactions. That's the baseline, right? But then you can go deeper. You can identify what are the different drop-offs at different levels of your conversion funnel, whether that's a conversion funnel towards a transaction, or whether that's towards creating an account, or using a specific functionality. So it not only helps you understand your user behavior, but it also helps you understand improvement areas in your product. So, for example, if you are a content website and you can see that users are spending a lot of time discovering content and are spending very little time consuming that content, then you know that your discovery process needs to be improved, right? So, these are some of the things that you can do to improve the experience of your product. And it's not just about improving the experience, it's also about identifying new product opportunities. So you can see if there is a specific feature that users are using very frequently, which you weren't really thinking about a lot, then you know that this is the angle that you can evolve your product in. So event tracking, product analytics is a very powerful tool in any product managers or people in product growth in their arsenal to have to understand how users are actually using the product, and how to improve the future product roadmaps.
Nice, nice. And let's say somebody is curious to get further into the topic, like what are some of the common mistakes and pitfalls that you see when moving into the space, and then potentially how to mitigate those as well?
Yep. So on the face of it, implementing event tracking actually seems fairly simple, right? But there are some common pitfalls that generally, if you're not too careful about it, it's easy for you to fall into. So the first one is that you don't track enough events, and the flip side is of it is that you track a lot of events, right? So you have to um, find the sweet spot on things that you want to track, um, and track those. So that's one. The second one is that you want to have a consistent naming conventions for each of the events that you're tracking. Generally, what we've seen is that if you start with a couple of events, you follow a different convention, but then you add I in the future, if you add more events, they have a completely different naming convention, and then your events are all over the place. And um, it's easy for the person who has designed those events or implemented those events in the first place to understand what they mean. But if you have other people on your team, it's very hard for them to understand what exactly those events means. Because as we discussed earlier, events are nothing but different points in the user journey where you basically track user actions. And those user actions generally need to have a very clear and very specific definition that everybody needs to understand. Um, Another pitfall that we see generally with larger teams is that one team creates events in a different way, and then the other team creates events in a different way. They're working in silos, and generally, what ends up happening is there's a lot of duplication of events. There's also expectation from the other team that they would be covering a certain user journey, while the other team is not actually covering those user journeys. So these are some of the primary pitfalls that we see a lot in event tracking implementations.
Nice. So one of them I'm hearing is like to on the one side decide on where to land on the spectrum of tracking too little or too much, and then on the other side also making sure that there's clear team alignment, like within certain teams, like that there's like consistent logic, and also making sure that teams coordinate among each other, which part of the product is covered by which team, and also that everybody speaks the same language, and also again like following the same schema. Is there maybe on the first side on that spectrum where to land? Is there any recommendations you have on how to decide on that? And also, I'm thinking, for example, like having kind of catch all or like events that catch more use cases, and also how to think about properties, for example.
Yeah. So generally, there are when you get into event tracking, there are some generic events which you can track, which gives you a very good baseline. So, for example, if you have a web-based product, then you can have a page view event. That's a generic event which tracks every time a user lands on a page view. And then with that event, you can track a lot of metadata about the page view. So, for example, what was the URL for that page? And if you have a product which has multiple domains or multiple subdomains, you can also track the domain of that page view. So it gives you a very nice summarized overview of a user's journey across a website. So if let's say your website has hundreds of pages, you want to see what are the most popular landing pages. You want to see what are the pages where users drop off a lot. The page view event is a very helpful event for that. And then similarly, there are some uh, uh, default events that we can track. So, for example, button clicks, element clicks, form submissions. So these are again basic events where you can have a very simple event that tracks basic user interactions. But then, if you want to drill down, you can use event properties, and you can enter metadata over there to identify which specific user journey you want to track. So, for example, if you have 10 forms on your website, you can track all of those forms with one specific form submitted event. But then within that event, you can have a property which would be form name. And then within form name, you can pass on the different types of forms that you have on your website. And then in your reporting, you can identify what are the most popular types of forms that users are filling.
lot of things I'd like to double down or dive deeper in on, like for example, the event properties or also like how user properties relate to this. But maybe we can take a step back and think about like the key principles of like how do you start building a solid tracking plan and like how to go about this.
Yeah. So it's whenever you're creating a tracking plan, it's easy to, start with just the events, right? So you can see, okay, these are the things that I want to track. But that's not usually the right way to do it. Because what ends up happening is that you'll try to track anything and everything. But the right way to go about is to, before you even go into the tracking plan, is you identify the data use cases and business questions that you want to answer. And to do that, you basically have to see what are the important questions that you want to answer for your business and for your product. So, for example, for your business, it's going to be very important to identify what is the number of transactions, what is the revenue that your business is generating, what is the revenue per user, what is the average number of transactions per user, how frequently do users conduct a transaction? Do they come back after conducting their first transaction? And if they do, how soon do they return? So these are some of the basic um, business questions that you want to answer for your business. Then you come to your product. For your product, you have your key funnels that you want to track. You want to identify where your users are coming from. If there is any specific country or geography where you're getting more users than other places, if there's any specific source, if there's any specific campaign which is leading to a high number of users, that's something that you want to track. You want to track the conversion rate for each of your sources. You want to track the usage of specific features. So, for example, if you are a mobile game, then you want to see how much time is being spent on your mobile game, how frequently are users opening your app to play the game, so things like that, right? So the first step is to identify all of these business questions, but then you also have to prioritize and pick the most important ones. Once you've done those, then you go into defining the events that you want to track, and that's where basically your tracking plan comes in. And one rule of thumb that we always need to follow is whatever event you want to track, it has to answer at least one business question or contribute towards answering at least one business question that helps you keep your tracking plan in check, that you're not tracking anything that nobody is going to use, right? Plus, one thing is also very important to understand is that generally all the analytics platforms, they have event volume quotas. So you also want to make sure that you're utilizing your quota in the best way possible, and you want to maximize your efficiency over there. So again, important business questions that need to be identified first, and then you go into defining all the events that you want to track, and then make sure that all of the events are mapped against a business question.
Nice. So I'm summarizing, or like I can see also that starting from the events themselves, it's easy to like, it would be nice to like know this, or like, this drop down also seems interesting and I would like to know. But approaching as you're describing it, starting from the business purpose and the questions resulting from that first, make sure that everything is like pointed. And as analytics is not kind of a purpose by itself, but it's supporting the business objectives and like the direction the company should take. So starting from that and then defining the KPIs and then the events that are associated to that. Yeah. That's anything like you found helpful in getting started with that. Something I'd, for example, like to do is like thinking about, okay, let's bring stakeholders together as at kind of a kickoff phase and like make sure all the voices are heard from different stakeholders and then bring things together. Is there anything else or like, yeah, what do you find helpful in this discovery phase and definition phase?
Yeah. So generally, it's always good to have all the stakeholders share their business questions, and and then what you need to do is need to identify patterns and see what are the common ones, and then you focus on those, and make sure that the business questions that you shortlist are measurable. They should not be weak, right? And then you can definitely use our event tracking playbook to see how you can go from business questions to events, right? So once you have a list of business questions, then you need to see, okay, how do I transform these, or how do I jump from these business questions into events? So if you take a look at our event tracking playbook, you will find examples over there where we have specific events that are related to specific business questions.
Nice, nice. And is there anything like which you see as a recurring theme on like different industries, like for example in SaaS, e-commerce, or fintech products, like any differences there that you see as a recurring pattern, maybe, or recommendations?
Yes. So generally speaking, whenever it comes to a specific industry, we've definitely seen that there is an overlap of business questions, and then similarly an overlap of events that we need to track. So, for example, for SaaS, generally the retention rates are higher, and over there we need to track. Generally in SaaS, there's a trial to premium conversion, right? So this is something which kind of is a key metric that every SaaS business leader wants to track, and becomes a key business question. And then we need to make sure that we are tracking this business question in our event so that we are able to answer this business question. Similarly, in e-commerce, we want to see if users are able to discover the products that they want to purchase. So a key metric over there would be how many products does a user generally view before adding something to their cart. And then there's going to be the conversion rate from adding something to their cart to actually completing the purchase rate. Completing the purchase, and then you measure the conversion rate of transactions where somebody has added something to their cart and they actually ended up completing the purchase. Another example would be for fintech apps. It's important for fintech apps to have a very user friendly journey in the initial stages of onboarding, because generally onboarding on a fintech app has a lot of steps. You have to go through verifications, and you have to verify your email, your phone number, your identity, things like that. So it's an important business question over there for a fintech app to understand how many of their new users are actually converted. And then this again translates into events which are focused towards the initial onboarding conversion. So yeah, there definitely are themes which are common across the board.
Nice. Yeah. I can also see like when we're thinking about SaaS, like for example in SaaS where like like activation retention is really important. So you want to make sure your events are particularly getting visibility there. E-commerce maybe more like transactional and getting that conversion, maybe a repeat purchase down the line, maybe the average order value, and again like tying those events to those business objectives and business questions. And then fintech, yeah, as you're saying, like a lot of onboarding potential like friction sometimes due to regulation or simply like the onboarding that's needed, how to get those effectively through that activation and fully onboarded. And yeah, that sounds good. I'm thinking like what are like teams that are implementing event tracking, like what are some of the common challenges you're seeing? So let's say there is a clarity on what teams want to track, like how to get the ball rolling on the side of the actual implementation.
Yeah, so there are several challenges that happen, right? So again, like I mentioned, it's very easy to get lost into trying to track everything and anything, right? So we need to first make sure that we're tracking only the required amount of events, and we're not tracking everything. Whatever we are tracking has to be backed by business questions. That's one. Then the second one is and this is now getting into the technical details of event tracking, is identifying the source of events. So whenever we have any event that is business critical, we need to make sure that they are tracked from the server side, Those server-side events are generally much more accurate compared to front-end or client-side events. Because on the client side, there could be a lot of factors involved, which could lead into loss of tracking in events. For example, user has blocked their cookies. They don't have tracking enabled, or there could be some latency issues which cause delays or losses in event tracking, which is not the case in server-side tracking. So whenever we are tracking any important conversion, we need to make sure that we are using server-side tracking instead of front-end tracking. That's one. And then obviously, whenever we try to track events, we need to make sure that we are following the right naming conventions, whether it's for event names, whether it's for event properties, whether it's for user properties. We need to be very careful about following the correct event naming convention. And talking about naming convention, I would again like to mention our event tracking playbook. It gives us a very clear guideline on the conventions that we can follow to make sure that our event tracking naming convention is consistent across the board. A general thing that we recommend to anybody who is implementing events is to try with a couple of events and then see what they are actually tracking within the tracking tool. Once they are satisfied with that, they can then go into complete implementation of implementing. Let's say if they want to implement the rest of their tracking plan, they can do that. But it's generally recommended to start with a couple of events to see if everything is working as expected. It, whatever analytics tool you use, they generally offer very good and robust audit tools which you can use to check and verify if your events are being tracked the way they should be. So if you're talking about Amplitude, then Amplitude has a very helpful browser plugin that anybody can use. You can just install that plugin in your browser. You can browse through the website or your mobile app as a regular user, and then Amplitude's plugin will be able to identify all the events that have been implemented. You can drill as deep as you want to view the details of the event that are being tracked. Similarly, and again going into a bit of detail, uh, I've talked about properties, right? So there are two types of properties. One is an event property, the other is a user property. This is one of those mistakes which can happen very easily, that you want to track something as a user property, but it is being tracked as an event property. Um, Again, this can be viewed through Amplitude's browser plugin. You can easily see which property is being tracked as an event property and which property is being tracked as a user property. So yeah.
Nice, nice, nice. And the plugin you mentioned, that's, I think it's Amplitude Explorer, or somebody would want to search it.
Yes.
It's
So
yeah.
it's Amplitude Explorer. So there's a browser plugin. If you want to track your behavior on websites, it's Amplitude Explorer. If you want to do it on mobile apps, then you will have to log into your Amplitude and basically navigate to Amplitude Explorer within Amplitude, and then you'll be able to see all the traffic from your IP address, and then you can identify yourself and look at all of your events that you've triggered.
Got it. Like you would look yourself up, and then you can navigate through the app or do certain actions like in your product, and then like you're gonna see what events are coming through. I guess it's a good segue on the next question on like how companies can ensure data quality and like the accuracy of a tracking plan. Maybe also like after that initial implementation is done, how to maintain it over time. Like any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, first of all, whenever you are conducting any implementation, we recommend that you have separate projects for staging and production. This basically means that the data for production is does not include any user behavior from the staging environment. So your production data remains clean. That's one. And then the other reason is that you will do a lot of experimentations on your staging environment, and if you have a separate staging environment within your tracking tool, in this case, if we have separate projects within Amplitude, one for staging and one for production, then all the experiments that you're doing in staging remain contained within that specific project, and they have no impact on the production project. So that's one. Once you are satisfied with your implementation, once you are completely confident that the tracking that we have implemented is working properly, then you basically promote your tracking to production, and then you start tracking data in the production project. So that's how you start. But then what you also should do is you should maintain a central repository of all the events that you want to track in the future. So let's say you start with 10 events and then you release a new feature and you want to track something else. You need to um, add those events in that same central repository. Generally, what happens a lot of the times is nobody really keeps a track of what are the new events that are added. Or if, let's say, in the future you decide to add some properties to an event or maybe remove an event, and these changes are not tracked anywhere. And what ends up happening is nobody really knows what is being tracked, and the things that are being tracked in your analytics tool, are they accurate or not? They might seem like smaller problems, but generally, what ends up happening is that people in the company, the stakeholders who really want to take decisions based on data, they lose the trust in that data. We need to make sure that they have very high trust in the data that they're looking at, so that they're able to take decisions based on that data. So if we're talking about Amplitude, Amplitude has its own data system where you can maintain a repository of all the events that you are currently tracking and the events that you want to track in the future. That's a very helpful feature, because if something changes, if let's say your if there's a bug or if there's an error in your event tracking, Amplitude will be able to automatically identify that something is going wrong, and then it's very easy to for you to figure out where something has gone wrong. But if let's say that's too complicated, then you can use a simple Google Sheet to maintain a tracking plan, and maintain that manually. But generally, what we've seen it as a best practice is, if there's a Google Sheet, then there should be one person or one team responsible for maintaining it. If we have too many editors maintaining one single sheet, then again, nobody would really know what the actual truth is that we're trying to track. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can also see like generally having a course of action on how are new events, or how like what's the process of adding new events, and also like who is allowed to do that, or in what kind of process is it happening. Because I've seen on the one side also, like as you're describing, that too many events or like new events are added, or new tracking is added, that's not consistent. But also I've seen that some stakeholders are like, hey, I have this new business question, or there's this new feature release, or this UX change, and it's not reflected in the tracking. But I also don't know who to talk to or how to bring it in without kind of like potentially messing with the structure. So I think like having that clarity for everybody, how new events are layered, and then with that central place of documentation, that is a great angle there. Maybe switching gears to of obviously AI, the buzzword all around. Event tracking is not spared from it. Do you see any changes there? How AI and also like automation can impact event tracking and analytics?
Yeah. So generally, when it comes to event tracking, creating a tracking plan, and then testing out the tracking implementations, there's a lot of manual work that is required to make sure that things are working properly and you don't miss anything. Wherever there's a lot of work, manual work, there's a lot of opportunity for AI um, uh, to create some kind of inefficiency. So we've also released a beta for a tool that uses AI to help us create an initial draft of a tracking plan. And we've released it for use for everyone. So it's you can visit addecide.com/compass, compass with a K, to go through the tool. You can enter any URL that you want over there, and it's going to basically analyze your page and create a draft version of a tracking plan for you. Right now, it's in beta, so it only works on one page and gives you the top 5 events. But the good thing is that it takes into account all of the principles that we've talked about. So it doesn't just give you the events; it also identifies the business questions that we need to answer, and then based on that, it creates a list of events. It follows all the best practices for event taxonomy. It also makes sure that we use user event properties in the correct way with the correct formats. So and this is just the start, right? So there's a lot of potential for us to evolve this into something which can help us automate the creation of the tracking plan, identification of business questions, and things like that. And talk about the future, right? So whenever you do validation of event tracking, there's there's manual work there involved as well, and that's also a place where we see in the future that AI is going to play a role, where we can use AI to validate the tracking plan and identify any issues that we see in our tracking. So
Yeah, yeah.
exciting times.
Yeah, yeah, that is exciting, and I think that the theme I'm hearing is like AI can help assist kind of like the manual work or like the very effort intense work. But it's still important to kind of understand like why, how tracking, event tracking works, how to see it into context, into of analytics and both the KPIs and business questions to have that fundamental understanding and seeing like where AI can help kind of do the legwork on the details and like the very effort intense aspects. Very nice. And we'll of course link to Compass in the notes as well. So anybody who wants to check that out, give it a try. And also, we're very curious about feedback on how to develop it further and which direction to take it. Um, as we're coming up on time, final question: what are some of the like? If you can share some key takeaways for anybody or any teams who are looking to improve their event tracking today, like what would be like great starting points from that for them?
Yeah. So the first thing that we need to basically review is whatever we are tracking, what is it helping us in answering, right? So what is the objective that each event is basically helping us achieve, right? Um, that's the first thing that you need to do. Then the second thing is that you need to make sure that you have a very robust process in place of managing your event tracking, and then making sure that your event taxonomy is created in the right way. It might be painful to set those up for um, companies who already have a tracking implementation in place, but it's a pain that will give out dividends in the future, right? So it's easier to take a pain right now than live with the repercussions in the future. The most important thing for any data analytics implementation is to have trust in the data, and that's the first objective of having a robust tracking plan and a tracking implementation. Um, the engineers who are implementing tracking events, they also need to have a very standardized reference to look at whenever they are implementing any new events, or if they are reviewing any implementation tracking. If your quality assurance engineer wants to review the tracking, whatever is implemented, they again need to have a standardized document which they can refer to and identify if things are implemented according to the tracking plan or not. That's why it's very important to have a centralized, standardized tracking plan document, yeah, which everybody in the organization can refer to. And again, I would like to mention our event tracking playbook over here that gives us a very nice and easy to follow process, which anybody, any organization at any stage can use to simplify and standardize their tracking implementation.
Nice, nice. I think they're really good takeaways and like also like concrete angles to get started. I will briefly throw around the screen for anybody who is interested and wants to learn more about this. Quick overview here of like the tracking, the playbook that we've put together. Touches on most of the topics we've discussed and in more detail. So check it out if you're curious about to learn more about that. Also, Compass is, as we mentioned, available to check out for free. Very open for feedback. And yeah, I think with that, thanks for sticking around to learn about more about event tracking. And yeah, thanks, Ahmad, for sharing your perspective and insights on the topic.
Thank you for having me, Gregor.